Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, or UNN, and we are the news division of our network, which is United Network. And our mission is to bring you the real news. What is going on? Because you know you're not really getting that from mainstream media. Most of you know alternative media is controlled as well. So how do you really know what's going on our planet and even in our communities, what's happening, right? So we release a ton of content throughout the week that includes in-depth news coverage. Our local stories are told through the eyes of our field messengers. We talk about the restoration of our planet and the new Earth. And we have reports from the Global Intelligence Agency, which has the highest security clearance on our planet. So that's how we know what's going on. And then we share that information with you guys. If you want more information on who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. And you can become a member. If not, that's okay. We do release our content about a week later after it's posted and made available to our members. So you can check us out on YouTube and Rumble for all of that great content. This podcast is a week in review. So I try to go over some of the top stories of what we discussed, and it's a great way to catch up on anything you may have missed, or if you want to share UNN with other people that you care about. With all the stuff we talk about, I encourage you guys to think critically and to ask questions. You know, if we talk about a certain location, which I think we're going to today as part of the Global Intelligence Agency report, start looking this stuff up. There's still information online. You can still be your own researcher and verify some information. And sometimes it helps too just to have a visual of some of these spots that we're talking about or groups that we're talking about. And we encourage you guys to share what you know with others, because that's how we get the word out, and that's how people really start to recognize what's really happening versus what mainstream media and alternative media are telling us. As far as announcements go, the only thing that I wanted to give you guys a heads up on is that I'm actually recording this episode a little bit early. I usually record it right on Saturday and I release it right after, but I'm not available to record this weekend. I'm doing some traveling, and so I have to record it a couple days early, which means as of right now, the Global Intelligence Agency report has not even been released for Friday. So when it gets to that point, I'll remind you, but that information is not going to include Friday's report. If Kim is able to do a report on Friday, then I will include that as part of next week's rundown. All right, here are the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's start with our field messenger reports. So these field messengers are everyday people who are telling us what's going on in their community, because for far too long, we have just believed whatever talking head is on the news. You know, these large companies, these networks send their correspondents all over the place, and there's usually an agenda behind it. Even if the reporter has honest intentions, trust me, they are not the final word on their story that goes out. And I speak from experience. I've been in the news business. I've worked for some of these stations, and I know the process. So we think it's best to cut all of those people out. And, you know, we all have these cell phones. We all have the ability to record what's going on in our community. Even if you've got no editing experience or anything like that, you can send us the material, and then we have a production team that puts together these stories for you. We just need you to tell us what's going on in your own backyard. So we've got several stories to go over, because we had about 3 stories in each of our news updates we produced this week. So let's get to it. Nelia from South Africa tells us about a community called Bosook in South Africa. And this community is really struggling to survive because mining companies have come in, they've devastated the area. She's got some really interesting video of how people are living in that area now. Because of all this mining, it has damaged some of the last remaining water resources. And it's really a sad thing, because this used to be a thriving farming town. And we do want to call attention to this stuff, because that's not okay. It's not okay for companies to come in, destroy communities, and then just walk away. This is something that has to change in the future. Chukwudi Kingsley out of Nigeria gives us a story. Our news team had to internally review this and discuss whether or not we wanted to release it, because this is video of their army in Nigeria. It's called the Nigerian Security Force, I believe. But they are essentially abusing civilians. And in this video, they are being extremely inappropriate. I think it's mainly men, but these men are on the ground. They're kicking them. They're beating them. Definitely not a report for children or for anyone that's weak. But this is really happening too. And this is not okay. It's unclear in this video what they were trying to get out of these people. But according to our reports, these people weren't doing anything wrong. So they were basically strong-arming them, and that's got to stop as well. It's completely barbaric. Natalie out of Australia tells us about a parking dispute going on in Mornington in Australia. It is a new digital parking initiative. It's sparking a lot of controversy. So basically, you pull into this area, and I think she said within 15 minutes, you've got to go to this website and scan something, pay something, and it's really hurting local businesses. People do not like this, and so people are not showing up. She showed this like barren area where, people normally be walking about, going to restaurants, and there's like no one. And the restaurants there was one guy, I think he was reporting up to a 30% loss in customers because of this. So this is definitely not the last that you're going to hear of this. I'm sure the civilians over there are not happy about this. Obviously, the business owners aren't. And we're trying to raise some awareness about this because they may need the funds, but how they're going about it isn't probably the best way. So we'll keep you posted on that. Daria out of Montana goes to a local greenery or nursery in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. And she shows us these beautiful, she covers a bunch of stuff. She covers some flowers, there's trees, there's shrubs. But really what's amazing are these pumpkins and these gourds that are at this place. And she talks to the person, I believe a farmer, that produced these, that, helped to make them grow and is now selling them. And, it's a nice fall harvest type story. If you want to learn a little bit about different types of gourds, I just call them all pumpkins, but apparently that is not accurate. But I really like the gourds with, we call them, in my house, we call them pimple pumpkins. The ones with all, it looks like, they've got warts all over them. I think those are the best. They've got the most character. I had to go around and search for some in my community, but I finally found some. So anyway, if you want to learn more about pumpkins and gourds and the different sizes and what they're called, I think there's even one that's a little bit brown that's like did she call it a chocolate pumpkin? Something like that. Anyway, it's a fun story. Check it out. Keza from Australia does a story about a beekeeping project in Tamborine, Australia. And the goal is to restore local ecosystems by bringing the bees back to both suburban and rural areas. So she interviews the people behind it, and they weren't always beekeepers. They just noticed that there was a problem. Bees are so important. We talk about this quite a bit, but we can't talk about it enough because if our bees go away, we no longer have food. I mean, it's that dramatic. And you'll really notice, like if you have a garden and things aren't growing properly, the moment you reintroduce bees and allow them to do everything they do with pollen and to travel, to the different flowers to pollinate them, before you know it, you're going to have a thriving garden. And so this is proof of that. And these groups of people go around and they're just trying to build back the bee population. It's really awesome. All right, Amy does a story out of New Jersey with her mom about water filtration. This particularly is a system that her mom has used for years. It's called the Calen water filtration system, and it connects to your tap water, right? So the water that comes out of the sink, and it converts it into alkaline water, which has been well documented for its health benefits. And basically, Amy just interviews her mom about how she uses the water, what she uses it for. She shows us how it works. I think we're going to see a lot of new inventions or perhaps inventions that have been around a while and that have just been covered up on how to get quality water because it is so important. And we're so limited with what we're able to do now. And there's a lot of information that's suppressed. But obviously, our bodies are primarily made of water. So water is very important for humanity. And I'm sure a lot of great inventions are going to be coming out, but it's nice to know about this one. Nululeko out of South Africa brings us a story about feeding children. So there was a pastor in Western Cape, South Africa, and he and his wife actually have transformed the lives of many children through this initiative to feed and support local children. So these children comes from, various types of homes where their parents can't provide for them. Maybe the parents aren't around anymore. There are orphans. There are people that have been lost due to drug trades and things like that. And so these children obviously need to be fed and cared for. And this is just a beautiful story of a pastor seeing a need and asking his wife, what can we do? And they actually do this out of their house. And, he talks about his plans for the future and how he would like to see this grow. But this is how we change the world. It may not be overnight, although if everybody started doing stuff like this, we would change the world pretty quickly. But this is a beautiful story of a couple just wanting to help children in their community and making it happen. Jean out of Haiti brings us a story about issues with the schools there, particularly in rural areas. They have significant challenges. They're dealing with severe shortages of educational materials, teacher resources. In fact, I believe he said that the teachers there don't really get paid. They just do what they do for the love of helping children. And because a lot of these places are in rural parts of Haiti, there's no government help. The help for the government usually comes for the urban areas, but not so much for the communities on the outskirts. And so he shows us video of children that are in their schoolrooms, obviously children covering many, many different ages. They don't have, specific grades and things like that. But they all were wearing a uniform, which I thought was interesting. But still, accommodations, everything, there's so much help that these schools really need. And Jean was bringing attention to that, which is awesome. Mwanda Michael out of Eastern Uganda gives us an update about a previous story that he brought us about a water pump project in Namutamba district. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And again, that's Eastern Uganda. This initiative aims to improve access to clean water for the local residents there. And he told us about it before, and he was doing an update on this because they've made significant progress. Again, this is very grassroots. No one just handed them a paycheck, but communities are coming together and supporting each other. So he's showing us the pump and the generator, how they're digging trenches, and the goal is to provide water for all of these different places, including the local school. So, they're digging trenches, installing pipes all around the homes, and making a difference. And sometimes you got to bootstrap it. And that's exactly what this community is doing. We have to think beyond getting a paycheck and then doing the work. That would be great. And when projects are available, funds will be available. But that doesn't mean that the companies, especially if these are large corporations, it doesn't mean those companies are going to be around anymore. So we still have to really think on our feet and support one another. So it's really nice to see that this community is doing that. All right, let's talk about some of our more in-depth news stories that we've covered this week. We did a story on ingredient labels, so those nutritional labels that you see, and this focused more on the U.S., but it was a comparison of the ingredients that are allowed in products in the U.S. compared to other countries. Because if you've ever done any travel and you've looked at the difference, there's like a laundry list of ingredients for the U.S. Most of the stuff you can't pronounce. And then for places in Europe and Canada, it's usually much better. So we do a deep dive into why is this happening? How is this happening? And it really boils down to something called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. In the U.S., we have this loophole that says companies can essentially regulate themselves. And if an ingredient is generally recognized as safe, and there's a lot of gray area there, they can just go ahead and throw it in these products. Well, that's not working out so well. And so we're going to play a soundbite here of, this is Vani Hari, if you guys know who she is. She's known as the food babe online. And she is talking about how drastically different these labels are. And I think she's comparing in this soundbite the United States to Europe and the different products. Take a listen.
In the US, there's 11 ingredients. In the UK, there's 3, and salt is optional. An ingredient called dimethylpolysiloxane is an ingredient preserved with formaldehyde, a neurotoxin. This is Skittles. Notice the long list of ingredient differences. 10 artificial dyes in the US version and titanium dioxide. This ingredient is banned in Europe because it can cause DNA damage. Artificial dyes are made from petroleum, and products containing these dyes require a warning label in Europe, and they have been linked to cancer and disruptions in the immune system. This on the screen back here is Gatorade. In the US, they use red 40 and caramel color. In Germany, they don't. They use carrot and sweet potatoes to color their Gatorade. This is Doritos. The US version has 3 different artificial dyes and MSG. The UK version does not.
Something to think about next time you are in the US and you start looking at those labels. I think we should all go shopping and we should just look at labels. I know that would make for a very boring shopping experience and your eyes may hurt afterward, but we'd probably make different choices, right? Another story we were working on this week is about fish maw, which is a prized delicacy and also used as traditional medicine in Asia. And it has resulted in this booming global market. So what it is, it's actually the dried swim bladder of a fish that helps it stay buoyant. And once it's taken out of the fish, it's really tough to know where it came from. So there's some issues there, being able to track stuff. It's also known as the cocaine of the seas. I'm sorry, if anything's known as the cocaine of anything, it's probably not the best thing. But really what the story focuses on most is over-harvesting because it's so popular, right? This is posing a major issue ecologically. It's causing a lot of damage. It's reducing fish populations and disrupting aquatic life. So if you've never heard of fish maw or you want to learn a little bit more, that's a great story to check out. Also, lost shipping containers. So as you guys know, global trade depends on sea transport. In fact, 80% of international goods are shipped across the ocean. But maybe what you didn't know is that we lose a lot of these shipping containers at sea. They estimate 1,000 containers fall off into the ocean every year. And this is for a variety of reasons: poor maintenance, rough waters, lack of training for the people that are, picking these things up and putting them wherever they go on the ship. The issue is these containers are falling off. Sometimes they're buoyant at first, but inevitably they end up sinking. It crushes everything below it. So when it falls onto the floor of the ocean, it crushes everything, sea life, whatever's underneath it. And then the paint on it can be toxic after a while. So that's leaking into our water supply. And something really needs to be done about this. First of all, why are we painting things with paint that could be toxic? I don't understand. But I'm sure that something could be done here. And, maybe there's a way to keep these buoyant. Why aren't these things tracked? Why don't we have tracking devices on these different things? There's a lot of questions, right? And we're just bringing up this issue that affects a lot of transport, right? 80% of international goods use these shipping containers. All right, in South Africa, they are dealing with food insecurity. And when I say insecurity, that includes skipping meals, smaller portions of meals, less nutritious food, which obviously creates long-term health problems. And poverty is at the heart of all of this. So we're raising awareness of this. This happens a lot. Again, rural areas do not get the attention from the government. Government support usually happens in urban areas. There's also a big gap between wages that people are earning and the cost of living. And we're seeing this around the world, right? This is a really big deal, and it's impacting about 20 million South Africans right now. For those of you that own a car, when was the last time you thought about what your car was worth? And have you heard these terms? Upside down, underwater. Well, if you owe more than your car is worth, it's called being upside down in your payments or being underwater. And this is impacting right now 1/3 of drivers in the U.S. There is a bigger problem for cars that were purchased since 2022, and this also impacts luxury vehicles. So what we did in this story, we gave you guys some tips on what to do if you have this negative equity for your car. And what I want to do in this soundbite that I'm going to play, this was part of the story, and I thought it was a good parody of how ridiculous the situation is. So in this soundbite, this is like a YouTube creator, and he's playing the part of the person that owns the vehicle as well as the person that sold him the vehicle and, now wants money for the vehicle. And I have to give you guys a heads up, there's cuss word in this, but it's pretty darn funny. Take a listen.
I am here to sell my used car. Sure, looks like we can give you $20,000 for it. Cool, here you go. I will be taking these. Hey, what the hell? You owe us $25,000. For what? Remember when you borrowed money from us to purchase this car? Yeah, and? Well, your loan is underwater. What are you talking about? I don't see any water anywhere. No, dummy, you still owe $25,000 on the loan, but your car is only worth $20,000. So I have to give you 20 grand and another 5,000 on top of that? Yep, so it's costing me money to sell my own car? Mm-hmm. Cars are such a bad investment. Yep, and we make a shitload of money from people like you.
Don't you just wish local car dealerships would be upfront and honest with you like this? I mean, how refreshing would that be? All right, our next story is about processing raw poultry and the risk of salmonella. So the USDA, their Food Safety and Inspection Service, is trying to make some adjustments. They allegedly are trying to reduce the amount of salmonella outbreaks, I guess, or salmonella that is in the processing plants for raw poultry. And that sounds like a good thing, right? But we went digging on this, and we talked with a lot of local farmers and people that run their own processing plants. And these are not big plants, guys. These are small plants, and they really gave us the lowdown on what's going on here. And this proposal could be devastating for small farms and small plants. Long story short, they're making them jump through a bunch of hoops and hurdles, different testing that is going to cost them a lot of money. A lot of the stuff really doesn't make sense. And so I want to play for you a soundbite of a woman. Her name's Rosanna. I interviewed her. She has a small processing plant in rural Kansas, and she is talking about how if this proposal passes as is, it's going to leave a lot of plants just closing their doors. And then what are the farmers going to do? How are they going to process their birds? Take a listen.
We did some numbers, and we're still trying to refine them as a small group of processors. But even if just one of us processors went out of business, that is the complete total of what the USDA suggested as a industry impact. So they grossly underestimated anybody going out of business. and I think so, like 3 million, what I say, like 3 million pounds from one of the small processors. And that's like at $6 a pound. That was, 18 million. And I think they estimated like 8 million as a cost to industry. I need to pull this all up again, but their estimated cost of industry is just shockingly low.
So sorry for some of the beeps and weird audio things there. Like I mentioned, she was in rural Kansas, and the audio sounded great when I was recording with her, and then I downloaded it afterwards, and it was kind of a mess. So that was the best that we could do. We ran it through a bunch of filters. But anyway, there is the ability to comment on this. So the USDA, if you go to regulations.gov, you can comment up on this up through, I think it's like middle of January. And I encourage all of you guys to do this because this is a really big deal for these smaller processors, and they need our support. All right, we did another story on solar panels out of Texas. And this story reminds me not too long ago when we did the story on nursing homes, retirement homes, and how people were getting scammed. This is another one of those stories because a lot of people, if you drive around, at least here, I'm in the San Diego area of the US, and maybe it's because we get a lot of sunshine, but I see solar companies are everywhere and they're constantly trying to sell you the latest and greatest stuff. And we have not done this to our house. We've probably been pitched like 4 different times, but we never felt comfortable. And now I'm kind of seeing why. There are a lot of people in Texas, this is Texas based, that are saying, wow, we really got scammed with this. This led to a lot of financial burden for us, a lot of roof damage. And they encourage these people to have these really long-term contracts for these panels that really they can't afford. So, they can't afford the pricing. So then they extend the length of the contract. But then you get into issues when you're trying to sell your home. And then the contract goes with the house. And some people don't want to purchase that. So it kind of makes things extremely difficult. And people are promised all these tax credits. And a lot of times they're not even eligible for it. So we give you guys, if you're interested in solar panels, we just kind of give you the lowdown on what to look for and what to be aware of before signing any of these contracts. I did an interview with a lady by the name of Heather Florio, and she runs a business called Desert Harvest, and we talked about the benefits of aloe vera. When I think of aloe vera, I think, I've got a sunburn, I need to put some aloe vera on. But aloe vera has numerous health benefits. In fact, it's known as nature's wonder plant. But here's the thing, guys. Incredible things come of it, and Heather knows all about it. That's what her business is built on. But she says that aloe vera is really 95% water, and you have to be careful because there's a lot of knockoff products out there, and sometimes tests are run on these products, and there is no aloe vera in it, period, even though it's marketed as such. And sometimes they get caught.
In 2016, Bloomberg did a study in which they pulled aloe vera gelées off of CVS, Walmart, Walgreens shelves, and they tested all of them. And they had no measurable levels of aloe vera in them. Instead, they used a sugar substitute called maltodextrin, which on tests can mimic aloe vera. And so literally you're putting sugar water on your skin.
Isn't that lovely? Sugar water. That's what you guys are buying. Be careful. Oh, you need to check out our website, desertharvest.com. They have all these incredible products, including ladies. They're coming out with this whole underwear set. Apparently, aloe vera is great. It's an antimicrobial, antibacterial. So they're making underwear out of it for people that have leaks and, protects you in a lot of different ways. So that's coming out, I believe she said, next month. So check out their website for more information. And our final story is about schools in Egypt and how they are completely underfunded. And this isn't new information. This has been going on, unfortunately, for a really long time. There are major, major issues due to underfunding. There's a lack of teachers and resources. So the education ministry has now announced some reforms for the state schools, right? So that's not private, that's state stuff. They are talking about hiring 30,000 teachers annually, bypassing some sort of hiring freeze that was in place. And they're also talking about modifying the classes a little bit. I'm not really sure how all that's going to help. Teachers definitely could help a little bit, but they've also denied a lot of teachers that have applied. And I'm kind of like, beggars can't be choosers, maybe. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But the issue is there's a really high rate of absenteeism. Parents are pulling their kids out of school because it's not good for the kids. And they're turning to other things like what we're experiencing here in the U.S., homeschooling. I pulled my youngest 2 kids out of the public school system this last year. I'm now homeschooling them. People are doing private tutoring out of there as well. And there's some issues with that. People think that that's a little questionable as well. But the problem is these classrooms, even when the parents do send the kids to school, have upwards of 200 or more children in each of these classrooms. And some people are saying, you know what, the government's talking a big talk. These reforms look good on paper, but it's really all about implementation and student attendance. Because you can have these programs, but if the kids aren't there, then who's really benefiting, right? If you would like to actually watch these stories, you can do so right now if you become a member. Check out our website, unitednetwork.earth, for more information on that. You can also go to our YouTube and Rumble channel and check out these reports. Again, they're going to be released a week after they come out exclusively for our members. All right, let's give you guys an update on what was discussed as part of the Global Intelligence Agency operation reports this week. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, I'm only going to give you the highlights from what Kim discussed on Monday and Wednesday. As I'm recording this, it's actually Thursday, so Friday's report has not come out. When that report does come out, so on next week's rundown, I will give you any updates on what Kim said on Friday. So sorry about that. That's just a scheduling thing, but I at least wanted to get this information out to you guys as quickly as possible. So let's talk about what was discussed on Monday. So there was a lot of information presented on Monday about these BRICS meetings that are going on and this currency that they're trying to launch. Yawn. They are claiming this currency, this new BRICS digital currency, is going to be good in 60 days. They are giving people these wallets. The wallets right now are being used to fund arms to Israel. So that's what's keeping the war alive over there. And they're basically just saying a lot of stuff, and there's no way that they can truly accomplish this. They do not have a system to be able to support this currency. So I don't know if they're buying time or what they're doing, wishful thinking for some alignment to happen and, some aliens to come help them, whatever is not going to happen. Also, the secret space program and their operatives, they're making a lot of promises right now as well. They went to Egypt. And they were waiting for apparently the Abraxas to return. Those of you who don't know who the Abraxas is, they were a form of human, I believe human 1.0, and they were not good. Kim explains it as being like, silver spoon babies. They were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, which means they think that they're all that and a bag of chips. They want to control everything. Very snotty, Richie rich kind of, and I'm not talking about currency type stuff. I'm just thinking people that think that the whole world is theirs. And for a while, they did control part of planet Earth. So that's kind of where they got this from. They did not care for us at all. And a lot of these deep state people think that they are from the Abraxas, that they are part Abraxas in some manner, which is why they're, waiting for them to return, but they're going to be waiting for a very long time. If you look on any of the Q posts, which we are not fans of Q here, but if you look at their Twitter feed, especially because they post a lot more on Twitter, it is just insane right now. They are posting so much crap about Egypt. And this is where they're getting all this stuff from. Oh, the Abraxas are going to return, blah, 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 blah. You'll see all this weird King Tut stuff there right now, this weird infatuation with Egypt. And that's where all this is coming from. So one interesting thing that Kim talked about on Monday is that she was really tired. All these meetings are going on and people are just lying to each other. Well, she actually hopped on the line because usually she just listens in to know what's going on. And she actually hopped on the line and started talking to these people. And they were like, who are you? And how did you get access to this line? And, did her job to, best explain what's going on. These people are lying to you. This is never going to happen. It's just tough, I'm sure, in Kim's position to constantly listen to these lies and just be a butterfly on the wall or a fly on the wall, right? And so she actually participated a little bit. I don't know if it's going to help. More people know who she is now. We'll see where that goes. On Wednesday, I'm going to play a couple sound bites for you from Wednesday's GIA update because there's some really interesting things going on. Kim has talked about a debt call on the Omega system. So as we know, the Omega system controlled a lot of the nefarious stuff that was going on our planet. Everything was based on this computer system. So it's a sentient AI system. And it is nearly gone. It's like 0.00 whatever, we're at the very end of this thing being gone. And it tried to, and I mentioned this on our last report, our last episode, it tried to declare war on humanity. Well, instead of declaring war back, which Kim thought could give the system a little bit more juice, what we did is we did a debt call. And in Wednesday's update, Kim gives us more information on what this debt call means, because there's a lot of people that are confused by this. It's essentially calling back all things from anti-source. I'm going to let Kim explain the rest.
A debt call, when it was initiated several days ago, has more to do with the debt of those things that were created by, I guess you would say, anti-source. All things that were related to the borrowing or transmutation of source, direct energy, essence, consciousness, matter, frequency, knowledge, condemnation, and all the things that anti-source created, including, but not limited to, the Omega system. Now, as this debt call continues and the transmutation, or everything that was transmuted, gets taken back to the place and source of all things, it's the place where creation is so dense, there's actually nothing but creation in this place. And when everything gets sent back to this particular place or pulled into this particular place, it automatically becomes part of creation again. It's like it's not even a transmutation process. Nothing can exist in the place of all things versus the place of no things, except for creation itself. And therefore, based on that, there's nothing left of it. So recently, over the last several days, as the recall continues, that includes all things Omega and all things Omega created, including a lot of things here on Earth, such as hologram remnants, such as banking systems, such as telecommunication systems, and all systems DARPA and all systems SSP, or Secret Space Program, and all government systems and all money systems, and every Stargate access it had or a portal that it had in and out of the hologram. So that's the base root behind what we're starting to see manifesting here in our world, the world we currently live in. So the debt calls that we talked about earlier this week had to do with the base root deposits made when banks come into formation. And this is dating back long before the Federal Reserve ever existed. So these base capital accounts, including gold, started disappearing rapidly earlier this week. Over the last few days, this has continued to not only include hundreds of banks, but it also included the Fed, as we had talked about. Next, over the last 48 hours, we have also seen the base root of assets that were transferred to form all treasuries worldwide. Now, we see the U.S. government as having a treasury department. We also see other countries such as South Africa, that actually in the UK, they also have a treasury department as well. But behind the scenes, every country has a treasury in addition to its central bank. The treasuries are run by the Order of the Black Sun, and the central banking system is run by the Order of the Dragon. So the treasury department's base capital backing, gold and cash, also disappeared in the last 48 hours. So this was directly hitting the Order of the Black Sun, their capability to issue credit lines off fake dollars, fake money, pie-in-the-sky thoughts and ideas, all basically went away with that. Their license, basically, you could say, plus their initial agreement to come into being is now gone, because the Omega system can't support it anymore, because it doesn't have the ability to even stop it. Next, the formation of governments worldwide also had the same type of certificate, the same type of gold deposit or transfer that in the United States. That also includes things like the assigning of the Bureau of Land Management, mineral rights and assets, and all of these assets that back governments worldwide, and their agreements to utilize those assets also disappeared. So things are really starting to heat up for the deep state. In addition to that, all tax authorities backing to come into fruition and their certificates to operate also disappeared, as well as their connected systems. So right now, do they have computers that work? I'm sure they do. But as far as a worldwide system, number one, they don't have that. And number two, any numbers that they were showing on a screen as capital assets also have disappeared. So this is leaving everybody a little bit upset today, and it's going to continue until every single one of their systems that were built off the Omega system are gone. Other things that have been disappearing, which were critical at the time, have to do with the base platform access for things like telecommunications systems. All of those are disappearing. A lot of worldwide webs that were connected to things like internet and other things are disappearing, and it's flipping over to utilizing the golden age AI in order not to cause disruption in the world. So as we gain more and more on our side and they have less and less on their side, they really don't have any control over it. This is all happening at the highest level. Again, everything is being taken back to the place in the universe of all creation, or what you would call 0 point or a positive zero, and it gets absorbed back into all creation. The same thing is happening within the holograms that existed on our world.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about those holograms. So if you read any kind of religious text, when it talks about what I'm going to call the end times, it talks about a falling of the veil, where you can now see beyond what we typically call this artificial matrix that we've been living in. And that is happening with Omega leaving. Like we said, it's a debt call. It is taking back everything that anti-source / Omega created. And so you're going to start to see things a little bit differently. And this has never happened before. So, we're still trying to figure out what this is going to look like. But the next soundbite that I want to play is about Kim talking about these synths. So it's SYNTH. If you've never heard of a synth before, it is a demon reptile-like creature. Apparently, they're really tall in nature, and they existed as part of this hologram. Their job was to hold the hologram in place. So they're very real beings, or were, because I don't believe Kim doesn't think they're around anymore. She thinks she got rid of them. But I want to play this soundbite of where they were, because some of this crazy stuff that the deep state is posting ties into what they think is going to happen next. They think the veil is going to fall and these synths are going to be there, and we're going to see these synths and get freaked out and, whatever. That's not going to happen, but there is some truth behind what they're saying. So here's Kim again.
On Gaia, there are what I refer to as synths. I spell that SYNTHS. Synths are, let's call them demon-looking creatures that are synthetic. You wouldn't call them cyborgs. You would call them synthetic reptiles, clones, replicated beings with an inserted consciousness. They are somewhat of an Omega being, I guess you would say. They weren't even created by anti-source or in the way that life would be transmuted into something dark. These are nothing more than a synth. And the synths are beings that are responsible for holding the hologram in place. And to give you kind of an example of some of the things they're saying, they're talking about Solomon, and Solomon being in a prison. This is actually on their Twitter page, the Q people. And they said that he has been in a pit in Iran. What exactly are they talking about? Now, Solomon in this case may, when he existed on this planet, have had some access to what we call these rings, for lack of a better term. And these rings, they were connected directly to Saturn's rings and therefore directly connected to the lower astral. And these rings utilized things that were actually on Gaia, meaning outside the hologram that we call Earth. And they were utilized as control rooms, control systems, and in some cases, batteries for the hologram. So in one such case, I'll explain to you one particular location because I found it kind of fascinating. So one of the places in the world that these things existed were in the Mojave Desert. And, we were always working with Source and that kind of thing. So I'm looking for these rings as part of our job in dismantling the hologram. And this particular location was in the Mojave Desert. However, when I went to go look for it on my system, it basically said, I'm looking for a place called Sangria Island. And I'm like, Sangria Island? Where the heck is this? And I'm looking for some place on quote unquote Earth called Sangria Island so I can go to this place and find these rings. So Sangria Island ended up being in the place that we call the Mojave Desert, which technically on Gaia was not actually desert. It was an ocean, and this particular place in the Mojave Desert was actually what you would call a hill, a mountain, and it was kind of sticking up so I could see it's a volcano. And on this island lived around 500,000 people, humans, not our version of humans. These people had been there for a very long time. And when you take a look at this island, it looks like it has these spinning rings that would go around the island, and these people were not permitted to leave there. These were humans, and they were stuck there. So I'm like, well, who are these people? So now I'm having a conversation with these people. And I'm like, how did you get here? How long have you been here? They had been there for billions of years. We had talked about, well, if you wanted to leave, why didn't you just, how do I say it? Exit yourself, in a nice way to say that. And they said they tried, and they would just keep regenerating themselves on this island in this location. And what these rings do is they bind whoever or whatever is in it, and then they can utilize whatever is in it, or for the synths that were in these types of situations, they would actually use that binding to connect themselves to the hologram for manipulation purposes. Get a random flat tire, someone spontaneously passes away, the power goes out, weather manipulation, you name it. They had the ability for the synths that were here in these locations. They would have the ability to manipulate the hologram without governments. So I know people are saying, oh, there's a HARP, there's this, there's that. No. When I tell you the government doesn't have that kind of access anymore, they don't. Do the synths? Well, to some limited degree. So in this place here, obviously there are things that are terraforming, as I've said, and the changes that are being made have to actually reflect what technically is there, so that we do not have 8 billion people losing their mind. So believe it or not, in some ways, we will have desert, and then the desert would be transformed in a different way. Now, remember, there are people that live in the Mojave Desert right now. What would happen if the Mojave Desert is no longer there, and what happens to those people? We have to think carefully. I mean, I know we don't want deserts in the world, and they're not necessary, but let's give it some time. Let's figure out what we want to do as far as terraforming and transforming. And I'm not saying we as an us, I'm saying that's not my decision, right? So it's Source that's making decisions on what the world is going to look like in the interim when it changes. And it is changing. Okay, so that's one such type of Solomon's rings. And if you know the story about quote unquote Solomon, because it wasn't always for Solomon, these things have been there for billions of years now, since the explosion of Terra a long time ago. And that's where these people happen to come from. So they were no longer bound by the quote unquote rings. These ring locations, though, did to some degree, yes, there was a location in Iran where they were held. In that particular location, there was no quote unquote Solomon in any way, shape, or form in that location. The place is called the Zendane Soliman Pit. So it's spelled Zendane Soleyman, if you'd like to look it up. And in this location, what you had was these synths. There are other locations where there was synths as well. So when the deep state is talking about an alien invasion, what they're talking about, per se, is the fact that the hologram would no longer be present. Therefore, we would now be able to see all of these synths running around the planet. Now, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have any more synths as of late this afternoon. We will keep running checks overnight and tomorrow morning, because as the hologram falls and the veil is lifted, we now need to see reality, and that is not a reality we need to see, and we definitely don't need any more synths trying to control people. Other locations, Tibet, the Tibetan Plateau, also there's a national park just outside of Sandusky, Ohio, the Sierra Nevadas in California, Paris, France, Tel Aviv, no surprise there. Also Spiritual Mountain in Canada, and there were probably another 40 or 50 sites that would make this broadcast too long. But these are to give them a general idea. Number one, they know about Iran. They believed if they could get whatever was in that pit in Iran to raise itself and come into reality, that of course it would help them. But no, synths are not programmed that way anyway. Even if we did nothing, we would have some really funny looking beings running around the planet, and some of these beings would have been really tall, 30 foot, some for the smaller ones, and probably 75 foot, if not higher, taller for the larger ones. Now this would have looked like, King Kong demon meets reptilian meets humanity. That's what they were thinking was going to happen. But even then, if the synths are connected to the holograms, the synths would fall apart. So there is no real risk of an alien invasion. That's a nice rumor from the secret space program. For them, always remain relevant. We have a short period of time before everything is going to work out for us, and, that kind of thing. Meh, wrong.
They are also talking about possibly partnering with Elon Musk's Starlink to send these strange frequencies through your cell phone. You know, if you're combing around and you see stuff like that online through alternative media, that's not happening either. That's just one more thing. Who knows if they're just trying to cause fear with that. They're really treating Elon Musk like a rag doll right now. And not that I feel bad for the guy because, you know, he played with demons as a kid and I'm not really into that. And he, you know, thought he was going to help the Antichrist take over the world or the beast or I don't know. He thought he had some grand mission. And so that's why he's a major player right now. But yeah, you know, I guess once you go and you visit Trump and that camp, suddenly they start using you in all sorts of ways, use and abuse, right? All right, that's what I got for you this week. Again, this does not include the information that Kim may be putting out on Friday. I will include that as part of next week's update. If you guys enjoyed today's episode, it was a little bit shorter than normal, but if you enjoyed it, thanks so much. I encourage you guys to check us out at unitednetwork.earth. If you subscribe, if you become a member, that gives you on-demand access to all of our content, including complete news updates, our New Earth interviews, which we haven't been doing as of late because we changed format, but you can watch all of the previous New Earth interviews up there. And I promised coming up soon, we are going to relaunch that. It's going to be its own separate show, so we're looking forward to that. You'll also get the complete Global Intelligence Agency reports and all the updates on all things restoration, right? Can't beat that. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.